Very good afternoon, सभी को नमस्कार. A warm welcome to Elets Edtech Summit on 15th April. I welcome all my audience who is watching live on our Avatar platform, and we are here with another topic to discuss and deliberate on this particular topic, that is expansion of Edtech, upskilling the people about the new technologies. So, to discuss and deliberate on this particular topic, I would like to invite the esteemed speaker of this session. So, first of all, I would like to invite Mr. Sarath Bansal, co-founder and CEO Tinkerly. Thank you, Sarath sir. Thank you for giving your precious time to Let's at Tech Summit and accepting our invitation.
Thank you for
I
inviting
would
me.
like I would like to welcome Ms. Sahiba Pahwa, International Market Growth Quizzes INC. Thank you, Sahiba ma'am. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and giving your time to Let's at Tech Summit. I would like to welcome Ms. Charu Noheria, COO and co-founder Practically. Welcome, Charu ma'am. Thank you very much for joining Let's at Tech Summit.
Thank you so
I
much
would
for
like
having me.
to thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. It's all our pleasure, ma'am. I would like to welcome Mr. Ravi Sundarajan, Chief Operating Officer, Gupshup. Thank you, Ravi sir. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and giving your precious time to Let's at Tech Summit.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And I would like to welcome our speaker and moderator of the session, Mr. Brijesh Karia, CEO, Singania Education Services. Thank you, Brijesh. Thank you very much for coming to Let's at Tech Summit and accepting our
Thank you so
invitation
much,
as a
Abhishek ji.
moderator.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
So before starting the session, I would like to request all my audience, if you have any questions regarding the EdTech, regarding the future of EdTech in the education space, please be free. Please put your question in the Q&A section so that all our esteemed panelists can take it live and clear your all queries. So by not taking much time, I will hand over this virtual dice to Mr. Brijesh Karia to moderate this session, and looking forward for the wonderful discussion and deliberation from all the panelists. Over to you, Brijesh sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abhishek ji. First and foremost, I would like to say a big hi to all my fellow panelists. Welcome to this particular panel, and I'm sure we'll be able to add a lot of value to our audience in the next 35 to 40 minutes. That is one. And I would like to thank Elets for organizing this wonderful summit, Dr. Ravi Gupta and Mr. Abhishek Tomar for having assembled the best minds of the industry here. Thank you so much. Right. So let me start with the panel straight away. I would like to start with Charu. So Charu, in March 20, you remember all of a sudden an announcement was made that starting tomorrow schools are going to be closed, and all of a sudden crores of children had no idea what's going to happen the next day, whether schools would be there, not there. And that is why I think the edtech companies really rose to the fore. They made sure that the solutions are presented overnight, and all of a sudden we could see teachers, 50-year-old teachers, 55-year-old teachers who have never touched tech in their life, going on to various tech platforms. And it's been a revolution of sorts. So I think first and foremost, the whole teaching fraternity as well as the edtech fraternity deserves a huge round of applause from all of us for the stellar work that they have done in the last 2 years. It's been absolutely amazing. So Charu, how do you see this revolution? Because it's been absolutely beautiful for a journey for a country like India. Because I remember 2 years back when edtech companies used to go to school, the question was why technology? Now the question is which technology, right? So Charu, how do you see the whole revolution, the edtech revolution that has panned out in the last 2 years? What are your views on it?
No, it's absolutely stunning to see how teachers have been able to adapt to this, right? I mean, as you rightly said, they really deserve a huge round of applause, being watching and closely associating with so many schools, so many teachers across the board. In fact, the last decade itself has been phenomenal for EdTech. But I think the last 2 years have leapfrogged this, to another decade, right? Like we've grown as a teaching fraternity, I think, for 10 years in those 2 years, compacted the learnings, the outcomes, the vision. Our horizons have expanded to what can be achieved in a 10 by 10 classroom, or 20 by 20 classroom, and we can bring in the world into the classroom, right? And at Practically also we try to do that. How do we bring in a real life ecosystem within the realm of a classroom and still preserving that guru shishya model to the core, right? So I think it's amazing to see teachers rise up to the occasion and drive learning to whatever best they can. I'm sure everybody dabbled through multiple platforms, multiple structures, multiple ways of doing things. The timetables were thrown off in the air, and they could do whatever best in that 4 hour. Right now, school had compact and became 4 hours during the day, because parents were worried about screen time and whatnot. So I think it's amazing what they've been able to do. And what I've seen is specifically that from being a content delivery robot in a classroom, the teacher himself has now become a facilitator, has now become a motivator, has been able to don so many different hats, and even become an entertainer of sorts, right? Because how do you really consume and keep the classroom entertained and engaged over a period of that time in front of a laptop or a phone? A lot of students joined through the phone, a lot of teachers were taking classes through a phone. Imagine a screen of this size and now running a school through this. So it has been amazing to see how teachers have donned so many hats and been able to do that effectively and learned, immersed into an environment and learned themselves. It's been really, really interesting to see. And their sheer power to consume so many applications and being able to make sense and string together that learning outcome that at the end of the day they hope that the class that they're teaching has been able to achieve.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for those words, Charu. So one thing that Charu pointed out very pertinently, the teachers of India have a wonderful spirit. They made sure that even through a small mobile screen, they were able to reach out to thousands of students and made sure that education does not suffer. So thank you for those opening remarks, Charu. So coming to Saiba, Charu spoke about the revolution, how it panned out across the crores of students and the lakhs of teachers, right? I'm sure this has now augmented a huge demand of skills which were earlier not known to teachers or students. And not only that, there's a new breed of youngsters now wanting to get into edtech companies, wanting to make sure that they have their own startups. So, what are the kind of skills that you think will be in demand in the next 5 to 10 years from an edtech perspective?
So, as Charu pointed out really well, that there have been lots and lots of challenges that teachers have faced in the last 2 years, right? We've had massive amount of reskilling revolution, is what I call it, wherein the teachers had to literally skill themselves 10 years up the line in terms of what are the kind of technology literacy that I need in the coming 10 years, right? So according to me, right, there's been a widespread need for technology reskilling as such, and I think teachers have done a great job in terms of learning how to utilize applications like how to have say synchronous learning in place, how to have asynchronous various amount of tools in place, how to use AI for the betterment of students. And I think the most important skill that they've learned is how to engage students uh, during the time when you need to map out at the same time learning outcomes in a customized format. So I think these are the skills of the future that teachers have really adapted to.
Right.
Just
So
to
one
add, I
thing that
think
I,
just
yeah,
to add, the most important skill that teachers have learnt is not to be camera shy. In a country
absolutely.
Yeah.
like India, a lot of women, lot of male teachers were not very stage confident, and they also know not just the students but also their parents are also watching them, right? And that
Absolutely.
has also really brought about that confidence in Indian teachers, and that's undertone that I see across the schools that I work with.
In fact, that is where I would like to appreciate the teachers even more. Imagine a doctor doing a surgery with thousands of people watching him. That is what was happening to our teachers. They're taking a live lecture. Parents are watching. Grandparents are watching. Not only watching, even judging. And that's why I said they have done a stellar job of delivering whatever best they could in that particular span of time. Right? Thank you so much, Saiba, for sharing. Shaiba, you shared a very interesting word there, learning outcomes. So, Sharad, I would just like to take that question forward. Now, when we talk about learning outcomes, academics has already, been there for years. I know there are a lot of innovations happening, but now with the advent of the NEP, it is about to change a little bit because now the focus is coming on skills, focus is coming on experiential learning, focus is coming on STEM education, coding, robotics are becoming the buzzword in schools. So, how do you see adaptation of skills in school along with the curriculum or along with academics? Can they coexist? Because usually in India, the tendency has to be an after-school course, but how do we make sure these schools become these skills rather become an intrinsic part of our schools? What is your view on that?
Right, Vijay. So I think one of the very most important thing we need to understand is the whatever exposure child gets, that what should I learn, where are my interests, because the child is spending about 8 hours in a school, 6 days in a week, and that is the first place they get to know that what is all there in the world. So like if there is a robotics education, if there is they can play guitar, or if they want to dance, whatever skills or whatever exposure they get, they might not be getting everything at home. Homes have a limitation that what they can subscribe to, and what they can afford to. So first exposure comes from the school. Now it is very important for schools to introduce new things beyond academics. So we see education, especially in K-12, we see in three phases: academics, tutoring or test prep, you can say, and then this is the co-curricular learning. So academics is something that is school's core element: teaching science, teaching maths, and using tools to enhance that teaching experience. That is school's core. That is not going to replace. But tutoring, test prep, that is something, it has been mostly out of the schools. But co-curricular is something, when you talk about, let's say, learning about AI or learning about, national education policy covered it, that has to be introduced in the schools. Now how they can do it is, uh, they can introduce the introductory level programs, and they do not have to do everything on their own. So there are companies which are providing different type of solutions. Some company like us will be providing a coding course or robotics course. Some other company will be providing a public speaking course. Another company would be doing an English course. So English is anyway part of academics, but let's say another debating course. So schools can introduce these programs on a outsourced basis or in their additional time hours basis, and an introductory version can be there, which can be affordable by all the students or very nominal cost element. And why I'm saying outsourcing it, because when you hire a full-time resource for something, you have a responsibility to recover it, you have a responsibility to create content, you have a responsibility to generate revenues out of it, and then convince management, everything. But when you're doing with a third party, you can be very quality conscious. You can be outcome oriented, if it is working or if it is not working, how many students are taking interest. And at the same time, companies have been providing these offerings to the schools. And another thing when schools should also see is that in schools, usually the difference in the leadership management and the teachers is that when company approaches, there are a lot of promises. So and at the end of the year, those promises are encountered or checked, that was that delivered, was that outcome delivered. And then at the end of the year, we figure out that we expected something and we got something else. But this learning outcome tracking can be on a very more frequent basis, like on a monthly basis, so that both the school management who is bringing this newer resources or newer opportunities, they also know that what I expected, what is being delivered, and company can also modify it. So these are the ways I think school leaders can introduce it.
Sure. So basically, I think collaboration is a keyword is what Sharad is trying to bring out here. That is, schools collaborate with companies who are very proficient in their particular domain. And if they have a good partnership, I think the learning outcomes can be enhanced much better, monitored much better, and more importantly, delivered much better, right? So that brings me to Ravi. Ravi, I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot, and I'm going to ask you two questions at the same time. One is, now that the pandemic is kind of over, things are opening up, the legacy businesses are making a comeback. So there's a slight dichotomy as to the future of the scale of the edtech companies. Will they be able to scale or grow at the same speed that they were in the last 2 years? That is the first question. And second, if yes, with collaboration that Sharad mentioned, how do we draw the roadmap for edtech companies in India in terms of collaboration with schools? How do you see this particular scenario?
Right. I mean, those are good questions. See what's happened. I think, as Charu also pointed out, and then Sharad also mentioned, is pre 2019 and 2020 is completely different, right? What we do is we kind of enable conversational messaging and more mobile interaction with various businesses to interact with the consumers using digital interactions. And we are a global company. We saw things happening in LATAM and even in China and various other markets where people were doing a lot more interactions. As mobile commerce is like 10, 20 times more than in India, even in China. And a lot of this consumption, WeChat, everything happens to WeChat, right? Hailing cabs, all the stuff is done through one big app, right? And in what's that?
The super app, as they call it.
The super app, as they call it, right? And then there are various other super apps like Grab in Southeast Asia, and then in LATAM people use a lot of other things where generally they're very more chatty, right? So, but in India, what happened was it was more one way, and you said people were they're not that age groups were different, and not many people were that comfortable trying to do more interactions on mobile or even through other digital mediums, and also they were camera shy. They didn't want to get on and do things even on FaceTime or Zoom and stuff like that, right? All this stuff wasn't happening. And the 2020 completely changed it. What we saw was there were three big things that happened. One is smartphone adoption. As you said, teachers, as Charu pointed out, teachers were doing classes through actually mobile phones, right? That's very tough. They just exploded because it became very cheaper, and bandwidth became very cheaper. People like Geo completely, the cost of bandwidth in India is cheapest in all over the world. Nowhere else you can get bandwidth as cheap as it is in India, right? So that caused people to be able to use it more. Second thing is that there were a lot of innovations like digital wallets, UPI. The UPI transactions are more than physical credit card transactions, more than anything else. These are people who are not even banked. Tier 2, tier 3 cities doing billions of transactions on UPI, lakhs of crores, right? It's much higher. It's increasing exponentially, which we didn't expect. So there are a lot of innovations that happened digitally that were happening anyway, but we started being used en masse. These innovations with their Paytm all came up, but they were not used en masse. And the third thing is pandemic completely changed. So there have been studies done, even how McKinsey came and looked at it, is that, and these things are not going away. To your question, is this going to go away? The habit has changed because what's happened is if somebody is going and getting things done, the three big things that happened because of the pandemic and remote exchanges, things became very personalized. Education is personalized today. What we do is based on different levels. If I want to do more coding, I'll take extra coding classes, as Sharad pointed out. If I want to do more public speaking, I'll take that in addition to the regular curriculum, right? And that was enabled because of, now you're saying I don't have to go shuttle from class to class and have my parents. Now I have a whole bunch of options, and the levels, even the teachers can decide. I can segregate people into different categories, give them that, because now you have them, you have them in different screens, different mediums. You can put them in different things. You can do gamification, as was pointed out, some of these things, and you can figure out which levels they are in, and then do change the way the education is done, gamification, entertainment, interactivity, and all that stuff. So personalization is a trend that's not going away. In fact, there are 100 plus unicorns in India. Most of them became unicorns the last 2 years, be in fintech, edtech, e-commerce, online businesses. And all this happened because of these innovations, because people want personalized interactions, and it's always on. It's not that you have to go to a store between 9 and 5, or if you go to a store, depending on what you get, you can't, or you go to a class and you get a teacher and you have to live with that. Now people can choose and say, I don't like this teacher, I'll switch here. I can have multiple, and there are multiple people taking multiple classes and multiple services being offered. So this personalization trend completely changed the way people do things, and they can consume it at 12 in the night, anytime they want, on demand, live. So personalization, interactivity. There was no interactivity before. Now you have in the video, everybody's watching, they can ask questions, they're not shy, they'll put it on the group. They don't have to talk loudly or talk over others. They can just put it and wait for the question to be answered. So the interactivity changed. So the personalization, interactivity, and always on completely changed the consumer expectations. A lot of people switched the way they interact with brands, became that. And then also the brands, they realize apps, right? As both Sahiba and Charu pointed out, people can only download so many apps. You can download 10 banking apps, 12 message, 12 travel apps, 10 educational apps. But then you say, how many apps can you download? So what happened is then people decided to interact. Khan Academy, one of the biggest educational institutions, they became a huge customer of ours, because they said they're coming to, even they realized that a lot of people are automatically interacting on WhatsApp, students, teachers, counselors, and everybody else. So they said, if we have to scale, we have to use medium like WhatsApp and go where the consumers are. And the consumers are where all the messaging apps are. And if you say mobile is the medium, the number one thing that you do on mobile today is message. You do text messaging, you use WhatsApp, you use Instagram, you interact with Facebook and LinkedIn and all the other popular messaging apps, or Uber or Ola, through these apps, through mobile, right? So the messaging apps is where kind of you're going where the consumers are. So they have to have a multi strategy. And they said, okay, even I may have a physical thing, even people may want to go to a physical store or anything else, or even to a class, but they want to know what is being offered. Is this being available? Teachers teaching. So that you can find out, it's a combination of physical, and as things going physical, you want to say, I'll do this live physically, but I want to do
Right.
this demand at a different point in time. So they're going to coexist.
Basically, what you're trying to say is both will coexist. The legacy
Both will
businesses and the
coexist,
tech companies will
and
go hand in hand.
the way they interact, personalization, interactivity, always on, not going to
In
go
fact,
away.
that's a very interesting facet that you brought out, Ravi. I would like to come back to you on that particular scenario in my second round of questions to you.
Right.
So that is one very interesting thing that I have a very beautiful question. How do you reach out to the audience? I'll just come back to you in a short while. So going back to Charu, Charu, now in terms of academics, we spoke about academics, learning outcomes, and everything that we've spoken. But now we are seeing a new breed of youngsters, which I was saying, some of them want to be subject matter experts, some of them want to be instructional designers, some of them want to be online super trainers, master trainers, whatever. I mean, different terms, the works have been coming. So are we seeing a new order of workforce in the coming century, which will require a beautiful, beautiful career path drawn out for them, make sure that they are in the right hands? How do you basically encourage youngsters to get into more into this, give them the right direction? I think you're on mute, Charu. You may have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so very, very interesting question. In fact, there was a study that came out, said that in 2030, I think more than 99% of the job descriptions we don't even know. We can't even conceive. Today, nobody can write down on a pen, on a paper and say, okay, these are the jobs that will be there in a decade or so, and we should prepare our students accordingly to that, right? According to that, and the skills that they will need. So I think we need to be very agile about this, and we need to have learners being able to pick up learning. So we need to teach learners how to learn, how to be able to really learn the skills along the way, and how the ecosystem kind of defines itself in the years to come. So that's a very important skill, how to be able to learn ourselves on our own, how to we go find learning to in go out in the world and figure out how to learn. And learning is everywhere, actually, if you look at it, right? You can learn from a flower in the garden if you're curious enough to bring back that learning into the classroom. And teachers have to now develop that skill in the learners, to be able to self learners, to be able to be motivated as learners, right? When I was growing up, I was not a very motivated learner, right? I'll do like 10% of what the teacher told me to do. And there were like everybody else around me except for that 1% top cream who would learn regardless of what the teacher taught or the parents told. They will learn by themselves, but the 99% of the class is actually not motivated to learn. How do you really develop that curiosity in young minds? How do you really motivate them to learn is what the skill we need to teach them. And how do apps like ours, in fact, practically aims to do that also. How do you really build those experiences for learners, so even the lowest motivational person in the class gets curious enough to learn, right? How do you bring Rutherford experiment, for example, and ask the student to be Rutherford himself and discover the way that Rutherford discovered nucleus, right? Now, how do you really bring those jaw-dropping experiences into the class? And that's, I think, that's the most important skill. And everything else, once they figure out that what they want to learn, everything else is out there available, right? Technology has made that available. Companies out there have made all of these things available. It's just a Google away. So I think that's for me, I think that's the most important skill that the learners need to learn. And technology is, we use AI, ML, we use deep learning to figure out, what are the skills required for the student, what he's interested in, where is he going wrong. And all of them are obviously assisted learning alongside that you give a student, especially in the K to 12 segment, like we cater to, practically offers that solution. And around all of the learning that student gets within a classroom, in the traditional classroom, honestly, only 20 to 30% is what we retain, right? In an experiential classroom, you can get to about 90% of that retention going, only because you've now getting the student as part of that learning, as part of that experience, making the student being able to really get on to an exercise of sorts. If you burnt calories, right, in the last 1 hour in doing exercise, you will really know it, you would feel it, right? But when we educate our students in a classroom, they don't feel that learning, it doesn't trigger an emotion within them, and unless that emotion is triggered, you won't retain. And that's what practically also aims to do, to trigger that emotion of learning and bring that joy alive, right? I think that's the kind of learners we want, rather than just saying, okay, I've learned from page number 56 to 67, and this is all I will learn because this is what will come in exam. And right,
Perfect.
so a very difficult, different breed of learners is what we are catering to.
Nice. Basically, two takeaways from that particular answer is one is going beyond books, and second, of course, is experiential learning. If you are doing it, you will learn it much better, and that's where Bloom's taxonomy automatically comes into play as well. So that's a very good answer, Charu. Thank you for that. So coming to Saiba, we've spoken a lot about learning. Learning, understanding, learning outcomes, but unfortunately, Indian education system is more assessment driven. Are you able to reproduce what you've learned in the exams or not? Eventually that is what parents see at the end of the day, because that's a very tangible outcome that my child was at 70%, today is at 80%, irrespective of what he's learned, what he's not learned. Some of the parents, it doesn't matter at all. So that is why my question to you is more about assessment. I remember a statement by the Prime Minister when the NEP was being announced. He says today in India, unfortunately, mark sheet driven education is dominating in place of learning driven education. And that is when in the NEP, the Parak thing was announced, performance assessment review, analysis of knowledge. So, how important are assessments going to be in the future? How can we customize them for schools? And how can we more democratize it for the student? For example, if I am a 60% student, I get a different assessment. Somebody is a 90% student, he gets a different assessment in the same exam. So how do we do adaptive assessment is what my question to you is.
Great question, Brijesh. So I have two things. Like what I see here is one, yes, India as an education field has always been very outcome driven, right? We've always worked towards one goal, what's that 1%, and we've ran after it. But in the last 2 years, it has completely transformed, and this is exactly what we do at Quizzes, right? We bring out formative assessments in the most raw format, and we try to build in, as Ravi mentioned here, that gamification around it. So what we're basically, the idea is to infuse both formative assessments, wherein you're seeing real-time data results for each and every learner in a very personalized format, along with engaging the learner, right? So you're motivating the learner alongside providing that formative assessment, blend into it. What this does and how it helps is basically one, you are focusing on each and every learner and creating those customized learning experiences. How do you do that? Is you basically try to engage them into a formative assessment, wherein during the time of instruction, you are actually trying to see what did they actually inculcate in their learning. That is one way I see it. The other way I see, assessment in the adaptive learning mode, as you mentioned, is that what we do is we try to use, and there are a lot of like tools out there these days that use, previous data and AI to capture what is the learning level of that student, and then accordingly create AI-based customized learning experiences and topics, right? To focus on the one area that the child would need more attention on. And I think tools like the recent education technology tools like ours do exactly just that, when the teacher is the guide and the student is actually the one who takes a more learner-centric approach and tries to see where do I stand in terms of a learning outcome and how can I improve further.
So teachers are no longer sage on the stage, they are a guide by the side is what the whole approach that the companies are taking, right? That's a very interesting answer, Charu. Thank you. Sorry, yes, Saiba, thank you so much for that answer. So basically, what I take away from that is very simple. You need to first identify the weaknesses of the child and then deal with him accordingly and give tests and assessments, which are basically helping him to move to the next level, right? Now, coming to Sharad, feedback is something very, very important because in India, usually feedback is often taken as criticism also. So, how important it is for edtech companies to take feedback? B, improvisation of the product. How critical is it? I mean, how agility plays an important role in an edtech particular fraternity? If you can throw some light on that.
I mean, absolutely immense role it plays, and in various models also. So, for example, there are consumer companies which sell their courses or products directly to parents and students, and there are companies that sell their products to schools. Now you might have seen the feedback has been talked more in the consumer centric products and very less in terms of school centric product. I was also mentioning this during the previous question as well. So talk about both. So I think because we work in both segments with the schools as well as direct to consumers, there are interesting ways that you can take feedback in the direct to consumer space. One is that so for example, if a child is doing a AI course with us, so one is that we have small batch or one-on-one classes. So the teacher gives the first feedback, and the student gives the feedback of the teacher. That has to be both-sided,
Right.
because then you come to a real feedback out of that. So that is a manual feedback that you get out of each interaction that is happening. Just like if you order a food on Swiggy, every time it will ask you to take a feedback, give a feedback, and every time after Uber. So that has to be there after class. Second, the feedback is based on the child's interaction and engagement on the platform. So for example, after the class, they have some revision content, they have some assignment, some quiz that they need to do. So now, how they are interacting and in what sense, how much time they're spending there. So that is the indirect feedback comes automatically that a product should take. That okay, this child is interested or not, or where they are doing mistake. And third comes from a community driven interest based purely, that let's say, so many people who are watching with they might have used Facebook or Instagram. So you might have always observed that whenever a certain type of content you like or watch more, it automatically starts showing you that content more and more. Similar things should happen, that child gets exposed to different type of learnings and different type of projects, and if they can see what kids in other part of the world are doing right now. Initially, when you're saying what is the tech exposure possible, we were discussing about now the learning has spread, tech has spread from four walls to anywhere in the world. Similarly, like in the conventional classroom, we used to see that okay, the topper of my class doing that, my friend has completed this chapter or learned from this book. Similarly, in a digital learning, a child sitting in the home should be able to see that what a child in the Bangalore is doing, who is also learning that same AI course, or what someone in say US is doing. So that feedback comes, that is inspirational, and the company should take that feedback and suggest the right
Yeah,
fit
that is
course.
more important because eventually, if you're not creating products for the consumers, it's never going to
Huh.
resonate well with the audience.
Yeah, and that feed then the parental pressure also gets taken away, because parents are now not selling anything that out of peer pressure, but selling or purchasing what the child is liked. So that's a better way of selling, of not on a pressure basis.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that answer, Sharad. So yes, feedback is very critical, is what the takeaway from the answer is. And companies need to take the feedback on a very regular basis. That is one thing that I love, the Swiggy example. After every transaction that you do, there's a feedback. So if there's constant feedback, I'm sure the scope for improvement keeps improving all the time. Thank you so much. So coming back to Ravi, Naval Ravikant very famously says, learn to build and learn to sell. If you're able to do both, you'll be unstoppable. So in India, there are a lot of people who know how to build fantastic products, but unfortunately, they fail miserably when it comes to taking those products to the audience. There's a huge gap. For example, in India, before the pandemic, when we started our Edtech company, I remember there were 4,500 officially registered Edtech startups in India. The question is, how many of them are actual unicorns to begin with? I'm sure you can count them on your fingertips, right? So that means majority of them are not able to make an impact because they are not able to reach the audience through a proper channel. So how are companies like yours making that difference with tools like conversational AI and other things that you're doing? Is it important, A, to reach to the audience in a right manner, and B, how are companies like Gupshup filling that gap?
Yeah, I think I'll definitely answer that. But before that, I'd like to, and it's related to this answer, is, and
Sure.
let's take the example of a EdTech product here, right? And
Right.
it is, as was clearly pointed out, Charu talked about, how do you make it more experiential, the learning, right? And
Right.
Saiba talked about gamification, and Sharad talked about personalization, right? Uh, and all these things, if you look at it, education itself in India, and when we're taking education as a product now, to answer your question, right?
Right.
So education itself, it needed a lot of change, and the way the Indian education system was, is, and it's now changing, is learning is a lifelong process, and everybody doesn't need to learn the same thing, and everybody doesn't have to have the aptitude for the same thing, right? You can't say everybody has to play the guitar. This is how you play it. Some people want to play the trombone, some people want to play the violin, the veena. That's how the education be. Imagine you went to music school and everybody had to learn the same curriculum and play the same things. right? So it doesn't work that way, right? So, and it's a lifelong process, because some people take longer to learn, because maybe it's a thing of the teacher, right? As Charu pointed out, maybe one person's really motivated and they're just saying, I just want to please my parents and teachers. It doesn't matter, whatever they ask me to do, I'll do. But 99% of people are not like that. They'll say, hey, this doesn't interest me, I would rather go do something else. So how do you figure out this personalization thing? Again, comes back, right? How do you get the interest? The key thing is to figure out what are the aptitude, what are the interests, because everybody can't be good at everything, and everybody has a gift on certain things. Is to tapping
Right.
that gift and figuring out how you do that. So that gets into the personalization aspect of it, and the gamification, all that. The experiential also is how do you deliver the product, right? When you make it very immersive and experience, we're talking about metaverse and stuff like that, right? People can log in and do a whole bunch of interactive experiences that make it changes the completely the way education is done, and makes you realize it's a lifelong process. Some people may take 2 years to master a subject, some people may take it in 3 months, but doesn't mean if a person could master it in 3 months, he's failed the class. Now, then that kind of completely dampens the thing and says, okay, I failed, I have to give this up, though I have an interest, right? So now it's completely changing with technology and all the stuff. And the people who are able to reach the audience is they're able to do one-on-one with everyone. Every consumer company, when it creates a product, they want to reach to millions of people. Nobody builds a product and says, I want to just get this only to 10,000 people, 20,000 people. Any founder, any person who's creating a product says, I want to reach as many people as I can. And now that's possible, because now what you're doing is you're creating a one-on-one experience to everyone. If Byju's has 1 million students, or if you take any example, if every student feels that they're getting a very personalized education with personalized feedback that is fine-tuned to their interest and their aptitude and their motivations, and you can create an experiential learning that is kind of you can gamify it based on, keep their interest level going and make the feedback very personalized, then there's no stopping. So now you have created a market of 1 for 1 million people, for millions of people. So it's like, that's one of the ones our tagline is, one-on-one with everyone. That's the new mantra we're saying, is every brand wants to do one-on-one with everyone, with the thing of personalization, interaction, and always on. And these things will never go away. Even if a physical education happens, the physical education is not enough today, because a physical education, where you go and you sit in a classroom for 1 hour and have a 1 quarter or 1 semester and you say it's over. It's not over, because your life, it's a lifelong process.
I'm
And
sure. So it's
unless you know
basically examination based learning, I'm sure, 100%.
right. So I think that's the key thing for any brand to take any product. If you don't know your segment, if you don't know what's the micro segment, who you're catering to, what you want to offer, and what motivates them, what takes them, and even when you're going selling, think about it. Think about a doctor. When you go to a doctor, they don't say, I have 10 medicines, which medicine do you want? It's a completely wrong way to sell. What they say is, let's me diagnose and find out what is your problem. If a student is there, what is it you need? Let's diagnose their need, their assessment, and think of it like a doctor, right? Any product, if you think of it as selling process, should be consultative, or any delivery process of any product. Then the doctor doesn't say, they ask you 20 questions to figure out what is your problem, what is it you want, and then they say, hey, this is the medicine for you, right? So similarly, every student has a separate medicine, a separate ailment, and or every need. So any brand that needs to scale needs to think of them as being a doctor, be it a business doctor, educational doctor, anything, if you're doing a delivery service, right? So you can use all the tools and technologies, but 100 years from now, it won't change. Whatever tools comes, whatever technology comes, the need to satisfy the basic need of people, right? On what is it that they want, they take, right? If you go to somebody and say, I want to promote you, get you promoted, they'll work with you. You can't just say, I want to sell this product, buy it. What is
Okay.
your problem? Where do you want to go? If he says, I have to get promoted, this is what I do, then why don't you take this and champion this? Similarly, if you're going to a teacher or an educational institute and say, hey, you want to get more students, you want to get great grades, you want to get good feedback, student feedback, and tell the teacher, I'm going to make you successful, be the best teacher you can, to motivate and create this great feeling for the students, that they feel that they're actually changing the world, or what they could do, their potential is being tapped, right? So that's what you
And
want
that's
to
a
tap.
very important analogy that you've shared. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ravi, because education in India specifically is not an impulse buy. It's a
Right.
heavy involvement buy, because in our case, the consumer is different and the customer is different.
That's correct.
The child is going to consume the product and the parent is the one who's going to spend the money for it. So I think the involvement of the parent, the doctor analogy, that's why it makes a lot of sense, as to diagnose the problem, identify the problem, and then try to reach out to the customer will make a lot of sense.
Right.
Perfect. Back to you, Ravi.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I would say. Like if you're any brand, if you want to scale anything, figure out your segment, figure out what their problem is, what their thoughts are. That's what they call it, evangelism, right? It's like you're saying that you have to believe in it, right? And they have to believe in it because when they typically in technology products they talk about causing the chasm, right? When you're doing the first 2.5% to 15-16% is early adopters. They are left brain people, so right brain people, right? So right brain people think from different from left brain people, and left brain people is all facts and figures and all that stuff. And right brain people, you have to touch. They say, oh, you think from their heart. What it is you have to believe. They believe in something, right? When they want to believe in something, Apple today comes up with a product, right? Any product they come up with, people say yes. But tomorrow, if Dell computers or anybody else comes up with a TV, nobody will buy a TV from them. Nobody will buy
Absolutely.
music iPod from them, right? Why are they buying all these things from Apple? Because what Apple says is they appeal to your right brain. It says like, hey, you want to change the world. You believe we get in people who want to change the world. Come with us, and we will change the world. Anything we do, we change the world. So when you have the belief, and the customers have the belief that anything we do, every employee is hired is hired to with the right belief system that you're here to change the world, not challenge status quo, right? So then it's a whole different culture you're building. So it's a culture, and that's important. So when you go to a customer, the first initial thing you have to do is to appeal to their right brain, which is, what do you believe in? Do I believe in the same thing? And everybody can't be a right customer. Then when you have the right belief, then they become your evangelists. They will tell others, hey, please use this within the company, outside the company. Then you cross the chasm. Then you go from 16% to 32%, you grow. So that's the key thing. And even when you have to appeal to students, you can't just say, hey, if you do facts and figures and stuff like that, they'll just do the first few pages. But when you appeal to their right brain, which is like figuring out what are their belief, what are their interests, what really motivates them, what makes them passionate, then it's a different kind of spiral, right? So that's what is
Makes
important, be it education or
makes
any other product.
Perfect. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Ravi. So
so
I'll just take it. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
can
Charu.
I add a couple of thoughts? So
Sure.
when Ravi was talking, I have like two thoughts occurring in me. One is, there's see, the consultative sale is essential, but there is also like if you're unconscious, right, at that time doctor is not going to ask you which medicine do you like. He's going to do whatever you it is supposed to
You feel this correct.
bring you to life, right? So there is a bare minimum that education needs to provide, and there is a bare minimum. That's where curriculums are put in place. There is a certain age driven learning that needs to happen, otherwise you're going to be left behind the curve. So that is something also very very necessary, and that is what also brings in that necessary discipline in learning, right? There is certain dynamic learning that can happen, but also there is a bare minimum that every learner should bring on to, and that's where a lot of pedagogical research is being done and getting coming back to the classroom. So that's something that I wanted to put out there. And the second is, like, when you go to a doctor, right? I mean, I have experienced this. I come from a family of doctors. Both my parents, my brother, my sister, everybody's a doctor. So I know that when the consumer is very educated about stuff that they're coming to a doctor with. For example, if I know that I have this problem potentially, and I go to Google and do a ton of research and go back to the doctor, and before the doctor even diagnoses this, I spit out everything that I have with a ton of treatments options also, and tell all of that. The doctor becomes quite disinterested, and first thing they'll say is that, do over education is also bad, right? And a customer who's too informed about their options is also something which doctors don't like, and rightly so, because then uh, my phones here are trying to record what I'm speaking. That's technology. What they do, they think I'm asking them questions. um, so that's something which is also happening in education, right? When teachers are grappling with the exactly same environment, where the 50 students are using 50 different apps, in fact 250 different apps, and they're coming back to the teacher and trying to now make their lives miserable, because now they're judging the teachers also, and comparing what the teaching is happening in the classroom vis-a-vis all of these apps that they have exposure to. So it's also creating a ton of confusion in the classrooms. And then when we work with schools, we definitely want to bring an end-to-end solution to the class and ensure that not just the bridging the gap between the school and the student is very very important. in classroom learning cannot be detached from post school learning, right? It has to be, and a teacher should have visibility into what they do at home to be able to make their time worthwhile in class. And that's what, practically school solution also does, where you're not just doing in classroom, you have an end-to-end ecosystem, including a school ERP, which we recently acquired, called Fedina. We kind of have now everything to do with administrative, curricular, post school, extracurricular, and now stringing it everything back and creating that, one seamless experience for the student, and more importantly for the teacher, right? So
I'm
that's
sure.
something, I
Basically,
wanted to
what I would say is it's sources for courses and basically identify the stakeholders and then design the product. And that's why, the instructional design model speaks that the ADDIE methodology specifically first says analyze, design, and then develop, and not the other way around. First, you've developed a product, then you're analyzing whom do I sell this to, and then you go about selling. It doesn't work
Right.
that way, right?
I think
So it's
getting
very,
this.
very important that you analyze the whole need of the segment, is what Ravi was trying to bring out. Charu added a very nice philosophy that does the segment really need that? Or it is something else that they have in mind. So I think it's a very interesting mix of thoughts from both of you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you
there
so
is
much.
the basic need to it. What Charles is pointing out is in some, there are always exceptions to certain things, and in this case,
Absolutely.
they're saying there is a basic requirement. And when a child is in kindergarten, they're in an unconscious state, right? What I'm saying is, when they're
Right.
so young, they don't know what they want, and so in the
Right.
formative years, you have to provide the basic education that India, I think, does well. But the question that comes up is when you're going to high school and above, right? So that's where it fails. I think K through 6 or K through 7 is fine. When we're going through 8 to 12, that's when people need to open up and then come up with the thing. So that's where it fails. And then it definitely, when you go into professional education, be it engineering or medicine, all that,
Perfect.
the experiential stuff is missing. So that's kind of where
Absolutely.
we need to do better. Yeah.
And that's why it depends on the whole approach as well. If you're speaking to the consumer directly, I'm sure you'll be able to bring out the benefits well.
Right.
Sometimes in India, it's the influencers, the teachers who decide, okay, this is the product that is good, and that's when the schools end up buying it. So it's, as I said, horses for courses kind of an approach that we need to keep, which is the stakeholder that you're dealing with, and then design the strategy accordingly. So I'll just take quickly a couple of questions from the audience. Okay, coming to you, Sailok, they're saying so much money is being invested in edtech. Unfortunately, in India, sometimes if you're investing money, it is a crime. I don't know why. Anyways, we'll leave that question for a later date. So much money is being invested in edtech, but has it positively affected learning outcomes? Is a question that we've got from Bangalore.
Um, I think thank you for posing that question. And definitely, yes, in the last, there has been a startup boom, specifically in edtech, in the last 2 years, right? And the most pressing question that comes is, are we even seeing the results that we see, right? And my answer would be just look at the growth charts, right? Every education technology company right now has seen a boom. And recently what we've also noticed is students are taking a more active approach towards learning, and that's happening because they're actually affected by those outcomes. Like I have we have reached out to hundreds of schools in India, and all of them have, like, teachers have mentioned that students are now so positively affected by the positive reinforcements that education technology products brings, that students themselves come up to them and suggest, we would like to implement this as part of our learning. As Charu also mentioned, right? Students are becoming much more informed, and they're the ones who are driving this, right? And teachers are happily being empowered with these education technology tools. So, to, like, in terms of number impact, definitely you can see we've crossed almost a 70 million mark, right? In terms of users, and in terms of the effect that I personally have received from various teachers is that we have seen students during this pandemic season, wherein, as mentioned earlier also by the panelists, that there's a lot of screen time happening, right? And parents have also been concerned about that extra screen time. Experiences such as ours are the ones who make a difference in terms of creating that impact and increasing the learning via these gamified experiences and
Sure.
motivating the learner.
Right. So basically, yes, there has been impact. I'll just add a couple of points on that particular thing. Yes, there has been digital fatigue. We all accept that. But I would like to say that if these companies were not there, or these platforms were not there, 2 years education wouldn't have happened. So let's all accept it that yes, there has been money spent, no doubt about it, but it has visible impact. I'll just share a small example. We run around 5 schools in Maharashtra and Gujarat, which had around almost 15,000 students. But 2 years back, before the pandemic, we had just launched a digital platform on which around 200,000 students are studying today. So, in terms of numbers, the kind of people that we have been able to reach out to and address the socio-economic divide as well as the digital divide has been huge. So, in terms of numbers, if I combine all the tech companies, the kind of influence that they've had in the last 2 years has been unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable, right? Coming to Ravi, I'm gonna, in the passage of time, gonna have to give you 1.5 to 2 minutes only for this question. How is conversational AI going to be useful going forward in terms of education as well as for the edtech domain as a whole?
Yeah, I think what it has done is kind of democratized the way education is being done today. What's happening with conversational AI is you can obviously personalize things, make it much more interactive, conversational, engaging, and also experiential. And also, you talked about your case where you're able to through digital platform reach to a lot more students. These were the people. A lot of times in tier two, tier three cities, they didn't have many apps. They would just have things like WhatsApp or typical messaging apps where they're able to converse with the typical thing resources that they have exposed to. So, and now before they had to depend on some local teacher who's there locally. Now everybody can have access to the same education, like the education that you've been giving, that today was available only for 15,000 students, can be given to another 200,000. Imagine there are tons of apps, right, as it was pointed out by Charvin Saiba. So all these apps are able to reach. Before it was just few thousand students, all of the institutions are, but through the apps that several institutions have created, they're able to reach millions of people. So it's completely changed the way made it very personal, very accessible, because today the digital internet is WhatsApp. Example, in India, in some places it's WeChat, some people it's Line, some people it's some other stuff. But whatever popular messaging app you have that you use, you can use that, right? And even some of the other things, and then use the common thing that you have on your phone and to access all these things or any other way you have. So I think it's democratized it, made it much more personalized, engaging, interactive, always on, consume it whenever you want. And it's just getting started, because it's not going to end here. Because engagement, there are different ways of looking at the things, and especially when you're going digital using different platforms, it must, and even app, right? In-app notifications can happen even if they're using different apps. So that's kind of what it has done.
Sure. Thank you, Ravi. So next question is to Sharad. Sharad, one user wants to ask us, I think he's from Delhi, if I'm not wrong. Is the journey of edtech unicorns in India over, or is it just the beginning? How do you see it?
There are ups and downs of the trend, sectors. But I think in this particular year, I can see in the second half of the year, you can see about 2 to 3 more unicorns in edtech. But and then that will continue to grow in the next year as well.
I think Charu is on the verge of being a unicorn, so I think we're going to have to reach out to her for a big treat
I have
soon.
one more thing to add here. I think the
That
unicorn,
brought
there
a
should be
smile to my face. I was like, it's not going to be over. I mean, as see, education is noble, but it's also a business, right? And as long as it is business, edtech specifically,
I'm sure
technology is not going to stop.
more than the business aspect, I would like to say, as long as you're impacting at scale,
exactly.
I think that is what EdTech has been able to do out. And you require money for creating an impact at any point in time. And that's why I made
Right,
a statement. I don't see how spending money on education is a crime. Simple as that.
right. No, definitely. I
Right.
think
Okay. So
a
we
lot
have
of
to now.
edtech apps, their potential, lot of potential. I mean, I come across so many good products every day. We are actually raising our Series B very soon, and slice of money is obviously there for M&As, because you can't do everything alone, and you cannot do all of that. I mean, there's so much of opportunity and so many good products out there, so much of innovation happening, right? I mean, see, a lot of the what is over, I'll tell you, what is over is the building products to digitize what is there in offline to online, right? That I think is almost over. Now, how do you can use technology to really change and impact lives and bring about that those things that you can't do in offline and do a traditional in a classroom, right? Those are the things which are of the future, and metaverse
Obviously,
obviously is one
makes
of them.
sense. So I think we've got 5 minutes to go, and I will come to my last rapid fire. Everybody's going to get 30 seconds to answer my question, not more than that. So please keep your stopwatches on. So Sharad, if you were made the Education Minister of India, what is the first thing that you would love to change about our education system?
I'll bring the education budget in a token system that people can choose whatever they want to learn from wherever they want to learn. The money government is spending
Nice.
can be used there.
Nice. Saiba, if you were made in charge of implementing the NEP in India, what is the first thing that you'd love to do?
I'd first and foremost love to build in a system of formative assessments. Although we do talk about Parak, but I think there's a long run, and the quality of the Indian education system has leaps and bounds to cover even now.
I can see the passion relating to their products coming out, everyone. Fantastic. Yeah. So coming to you, Charu. Charu, if there was one practice you were given a choice that is not good in the Indian education system and you would love to do away with it, what is that?
uh, I think exams where you have to, I would say exams that you need supervision, right? So that's, and also I would like to introduce open book exams, right? So negative of that, like, where you are given a certain
The drawback,
curriculum and
on a lighter note, the drawback is the parents will start barging into the exam rooms with the books. So Ravi, with coming to you, one mantra that every edtech company in India should follow before they enter the market.
Uh, yeah, I would
Ravi is
just say
running through his mind right now, I'm sure.
yeah, the personalization. I would just stick with that. Obviously that's the most important thing. Be able to take it, make it personal, and so it's one-on-one education for everyone.
Brilliant, brilliant. So you've been a wonderful panel, my dear audience. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sure we were able to add some value in the last 1 hour to all of you. Our panelists have been wonderful. They've shared their thoughts. What we have done is we put the sugar in a teacup. Now it's upon you to stir that and make the tea sweet, take the takeaways and make sure that's implemented in your businesses. Thank you so much, everyone. Back to you, Abhishek ji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vijay sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful moderation. Thank you all panelists for giving your precious time to us. And Vijay sir, one question from my side also. Your mantra for the attack company that you want to give to all our
So
audience
mine
who
is
is
very
watching.
simple. Is as I read that. In fact, I was very happy that was discussed in the whole session. Diagnose the problem and then build a solution, and not the other way around.
Perfect.
Don't go out looking for a problem for which you build a solution. It should be the other way around.
Perfect. Thanks, Vijay sir. And I by this I thanks all my audience and really audience enjoyed this session. They have appreciated this session. And I request all my audience to please follow our speakers on their social handle as well. If you want to know more about the education domain, tech, and other specific knowledge, please follow. They are pretty much active on their social domains. If you have any query, you can directly put their query. Please ask some relevant query. Otherwise, you can put your query at education@digitallearning.in so that we can proceed to this speaker. If it is relevant, they will revert and we will get back to you. So by this, I will ask Deepak to give the token of appreciation from the Elets Edtech Summit side to our speaker. This speaker certificate is presented to Mr. Brijesh Karia, CEO, Singhania Education Services. Thank you, Vijay
Thank you
sir.
so
Thank
much.
you very much.
Thank you so much.
Speaker certificate is presented to Ms. Charu Nuharia, COO and co-founder Practically. Thank you, Charu ma'am. Thank you very much for being part of this Elets Edtech Summit.
thank you so
This
much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, ma'am. And speaker certificate is presented to Mr. Ravi Sundajan, Chief Operating Officer, Kapshar. Thank you, Ravi sir. Thank you for accepting our invite and giving time to the LS Tech Summit. Speaker certificate is presented to Mr. Sir Kansal, co-founder and CEO, Tinkerly. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for being part of this Let's Tech Summit. Speaker certificate is presented to Ms. Sahiba Pahawa, International Markets Growth, Quizzes INC. Thank you, Saiba ma'am. Thank you very much for giving your time to Let's Tech Summit. So by this, we will wrap up this session. I thanks all my panelists for giving this 1 hour, precious 1 hour to us and enlightening by giving the more ideas regarding the tech, what is the future of the school. We have 7 more questions. So Brijesh ji, Charu, Ravi sir, Sarat, Sahiba will send you on the email. If it seems worthy, if you want to revert, please do to it. By this,
Sure.
thanks everyone. Sabhi ko namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.